So we're doing this interview at 4:30. At 2 p.m. today, Boris Johnson started his evidence to the Privileges Committee about whether he misled Parliament. At 2:30, MPs voted on Rishi Sunak's Brexit deal, and we're imminently expecting to see the Prime Minister publish his tax returns. Now, you had control over the timing of 2 out of 3 of these things. So why are they all happening on the same day?
Well, it's a busy day in politics, Sophie. There's been a lot of busy days in politics the last few years. Obviously, the Privileges Committee is working to the timetable of the Privileges Committee. Rishi Sunak's got a commitment to publish his tax returns, as has Keir Starmer, I might add as well. I think it's pure coincidence they're happening on the same day.
Pure coincidence? Come on, you're taking us for fools there. You know, Rishi Sunak promised to publish his tax returns on the 16th of November. He's just coincidentally happened to do it on the day that Boris Johnson's appearing in front of the Privileges Committee. We're supposed to believe that.
Well, I think you're right. The Prime Minister has pledged to publish his tax returns. Keir Starmer has also pledged to publish his tax returns.
I'm talking about the timing.
The timing, I believe, is a coincidence. I don't think there's anything else out there. I think in terms of the Privileges Committee, that's down to the Privileges Committee. In terms of the legislation, we would always be clear, have been clear, that we would publish the Windsor framework as negotiated back at Windsor with Ursula von der Leyen about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it would be published in due course. That is the good timing to do that. People have had plenty of time to study the document, both within the Conservative Party, the DUP and elsewhere. And it's not unusual that vote should be held today on a Wednesday.
There's a reason that I'm starting with the timing, because I do think this is quite important. It makes it harder for people like me to do our jobs properly, to scrutinise things properly, when you're trying to cram so much, not just in a day, in a matter of 4 hours.
Well, I think the House of Commons has coped well. The turnout has been high in those votes. It's the same day as Prime Minister's Question Time. I don't think it has put a burden on the House of Commons and a burden on people here being able to do that scrutiny. The Windsor Framework has been published some time ago, allowing people to look at that. And Boris Johnson's appearance at the Privileges Committee is obviously something which is, if you like, part of that process which is down to Parliament.
We haven't seen the tax return yet from Rishi Sunak. We were waiting it. It was expected to come at 4 p.m. What we know is that it will show that the Prime Minister is extremely wealthy. Does that mean that he's out of touch?
No, I don't think so at all, actually. I don't think so. It means that actually Rishi comes from a relatively modest background. His parents ran a pharmacy in Southampton. You know, he's somebody who, yes, he is wealthy now, but does not come from that sort of a background. He comes from a background of immigration into this country, parents who ran a pharmacy. One of his parents was a GP. You know, it's not a poor background, but not an unusual background.
Do you think most people who come from relatively modest backgrounds go to Winchester School then? Is that normal?
Well, I think actually his parents saved up a lot of money and worked really hard to get their child into a very, very good school. I think it's actually something to admire in his parents.
When people look at the tax return, some people may think, look, this is a guy who has a lot of wealth. How can he understand the issues that the country is now going through? How can he understand what parents are going through, for example, who send their kids to the local state school and they feel that they don't have enough money to properly give their kid the education that they deserve? Or he doesn't understand the energy bill crisis that so many people are struggling with.
Well, I disagree with that. Look, I don't think there's a correlation between someone's personal wealth and where they are in terms of understanding the public. The most important thing is that Rishi Sunak has shown by his delivery so far this year and his priorities that he has got the public's priorities by halving inflation, growing the economy, reducing debt, reducing hospital waiting lists and also stopping the boats are the people's priorities. And that's what he should be judged on, delivery of those priorities and delivery for the people of the United Kingdom. OK, well, we'll find out more, of course, when the tax returns are published. But just to talk about Brexit, if I may, the Windsor Framework, the Brexit deal for Northern Ireland, passed relatively easy. There were rebellions from the Conservative side. It was a 3-line whip, I think. So will there be repercussions for people who rebelled? Well, that'll be a matter for the whip's office rather than a matter for me as chairman of the Conservative Party. The most important thing here is that we got the deal through. and with a resounding, really solid vote amongst Conservative MPs, the vast majority of Conservative MPs supported it. And it's something that people said wasn't possible, that it wasn't possible to get a good deal with Brussels that works for the people of Northern Ireland, that works for the people of the whole of the United Kingdom. Unionist voters in Northern Ireland 3-1 in favour of doing this deal. And Rishi Sunak has shown that he can deliver on the people's priorities, which includes coming to a good deal which keeps Northern Ireland's place in the United Kingdom, respects the openness of the Irish border, and actually leads to an improving working relationship with Brussels as well. It's
all about Northern Ireland, of course, this deal, and yet the 8 Unionist MPs, the DUP MPs, didn't vote for it. Does that matter?
Well, it's ultimately important that the deal went through. As I said, I think the people of Northern Ireland overall strongly support the deal. Unionist voters support the deal at a ratio of 3-1.
What's your sort of evidence for that?
I think it was an opinion poll overnight, which the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland referenced today, and I think has been referenced elsewhere.
OK. A couple of big beasts, of course, rebelled on it, including 2 former Prime Ministers, Liz Truss and also Boris Johnson. Were you disappointed to see them not following you through the same voting lobby?
Well, I'm always disappointed when people aren't supporting the government. But nonetheless, I think it was a real achievement to get that through. The vast majority of Conservative MPs.
Why do you think Liz Truss and Boris Johnson didn't back it? Do you think it's because they didn't think it was a good deal, or because they actually just don't really like Rishi Sunak very much?
I think it's a question better put to them. What I'm clear about is 2 things: that it was a good deal for the people of the UK, a good deal for the people of Northern Ireland, and a good deal for Conservative MPs as well, who are also looking to move on past Brexit and to look forward to a more normal relationship, also in terms of our trade across the Irish Sea, make sure that trade flows better.
Do you have confidence in the Privileges Committee?
Well, look, it's Parliament has voted to give the Privileges Committee that investigation. That is a matter for Parliament. The Parliament has
That's not my question. Do you have confidence in the Privileges Committee?
Well, again, I do think that is a matter for Parliament. If you're asking for me personally or the Conservative Party, we don't take a position on that. That is a matter for Parliament and it's a matter for MPs who've asked the Privileges Committee to set up this inquiry.
OK, you're an MP. Do you have confidence in the Privileges Committee? It's not a trick question. It's quite a simple question, right?
Well, but the way I've been an MP for 18 years, nobody ever asked, do you have confidence in this committee or that committee? The committees get appointed by Parliament, some cases I think elected by Parliament, and it's properly a matter for Parliament. It's not a matter of my individual opinion as an MP. I have confidence in Parliament structures overall. OK.
So if the Privileges Committee find that MP misled Parliament deliberately and as a result was in contempt of the House, should they be able to continue as an MP, or do you think they should be suspended?
Well, I think that, again, we'll have to see what the Privileges Committee does in this case. We have been clear, the Prime Minister has been clear, it'll be a free vote for Conservative MPs. We'll have to see what the Privileges Committee recommends. That is the purpose of their investigation.
Will you follow the recommendations of the Privileges Committee?
Well, I think it'll be a free vote for MPs. We'll have to see what the investigation throws up and what the recommendation is. I wouldn't want to prejudge anything until then.
OK. Is Boris Johnson a liar?
Look, I think that is one of the questions that I think the Privileges Committee is looking at. You know, whether I think he's now said that he feels he did mislead Parliament. So the question is whether he willfully misled Parliament. That is, if you like, the question in front of the Privileges Committee. I'll wait and see that investigation.
Do you have an opinion on it, though? Do you think he did willfully mislead or lie, as other people might put it?
I think the purpose of the Privileges Committee is to look at all of that evidence. I would want to see, if I were following it closely, which I am, I would like to see what evidence he's given to the Privileges Committee, what evidence have other people given, what have a senior civil servant said, what have special advisors said. I'd want to see all of the evidence.
I mean, you say you've been following it closely, so what do you think so far?
Well, in terms of his own evidence, I'd like to see other evidence as well. And I'm sure everybody will want to see other evidence and look closely at what's been said.
So you haven't made up your mind then? I mean, that feels quite significant in a way. I mean, he's the guy who was Prime Minister for the Conservative Party until recently.
But I think that's the purpose of the investigation, is to get to the bottom, the committee hearings are to get to the bottom of who said what when.
I mean, his defence seems to be that, if you worked in a stressful environment like Number 10 during lockdown, then the rules and regulations and guidelines didn't apply in the same way. I mean, did you get that memo? I
don't... look, I think it's a question better put to him. Obviously, Boris is leading his own defence. Ample opportunity today to lay that out. I wouldn't really want to sort of paraphrase what his defence is. I think the most important thing is to wait for the committee to report, have a look at their report.
So you're party chairman, you're the man in charge of making sure the Conservatives don't get annihilated at the next election. If you look at the polls, it's not a complete impossibility. Is Boris Johnson an asset to the Conservative Party?
Well, I think Boris Johnson is a great campaigning asset to the Conservative Party. Only now I'm actually asking Boris if he would come out and campaign with us. For example, one of my local issue campaigns in London is saving some of our bus routes. Boris is passionate about London buses. He brought in the Route Master bus when he was the refreshed Route Master bus when he was Mayor of London. I think he's a campaigning asset for the Conservative Party. You
still think that he's a campaigning asset to the Conservative Party, even though people who went through an awful lot in lockdown, people who couldn't see their loved ones in care homes, people who couldn't comfort their loved ones at funerals, they'll be looking at a man who admits to misleading Parliament over his own actions and those in Number 10, a man who was fined by police for breaking lockdown rules, and you still think he's an asset, a campaigning asset?
Again, I wouldn't want to prejudge the Standards Committee investigation.
I've told you things that we already know, that he's fined by police and that he is messed up Parliament.
Is that, look, I've worked with Boris over a long time. He's been Mayor of London. I'm a London MP. Worked with him on the 2008 campaign, 2012 campaign, his time as Prime Minister. What I'm clear about is that Boris Johnson is a campaigning asset for the Conservative Party. And that is why we should be using Boris as somebody who will be campaigning in parts of the country for us at the next general election to return a Conservative government under Rishi Sunak.
Is he a man of integrity?
Look, I think Boris is a man who's reasonably well known. What his strengths are, what his weaknesses are. His great strength, I think, in this case, is his ability to campaign, his ability to galvanise voters as part of a broader Conservative family. I'm somebody who served under different Prime Ministers, under David Cameron, under Boris Johnson, under Rishi Sunak now, and I'm confident that Boris Johnson can be a campaigning asset for the Conservatives in the lead up to next year's general election.
But you're not saying that he's a man of integrity?
Well, look, I'm in the business of politics, not moral judgment calls. And when it comes to politics, I know that Boris Johnson is somebody who can campaign well for us, and I'm looking forward to seeing him campaigning for us at the general election and for him to be re-elected as the MP for Uxbridge and South Ruislip.